Is Florida State's offense being overlooked?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through the 22nd of September, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Today's show is going to talk about Florida State's offense, some underwhelming projections, if you will, from some people out there, fans included. I have some disagreements with that. Perhaps the meeting of the minds finds itself in the middle. We'll talk about that in a moment here at Locked On Seminoles. Also going to discuss Georgia Tech's depth chart and how the matchup works. It also cosigns with what we're talking about first. And again, that is the prime point of this show. Is Florida State's offense underrated? So let's get started with this. I want you to think back to last season. You've got a dynamic graduate student at quarterback who is as fast and athletic as just about any player on Florida State's roster, and quite frankly, about any roster in college football. Changes third downs, changes red zone, changes how you want to put an extra defender in the box to go against the run. Same thing in 21, same thing in 22. Florida State's offense was much different. Moving to this year, you have DJ Uiagalelei, who is more of a pocket passer. Big guy. He could lower his shoulder and give you the boom, but he's not going to dance around and make guys miss and go 75 yards for a touchdown. That's not who he is. But can this offense, which again is not necessarily getting the most rave reviews from people I've spoken with and some people in the media, is it a little underrated? Well, I'm going to provide some stats, some thoughts, and then combine that here with Georgia Tech's information, and we're going to come up with a solution. You make your own. You make your own prediction on that, but I have a pretty strong opinion about that we'll get to. Number one, last year, even with all the talent Florida State had, would you believe they were absolutely, unequivocally abysmal on third down? They were. Not bad, abysmal. The following numbers for a team that had first-round talent at receiver. They had a running back that was, I think, could have went in the first or early second round. He went a little later than I thought, but Trey was a great player. You got a quarterback that's probably better fit for college, but again, dynamic. You got a unique H-back / tight end / receiver in Jaheim. All those guys, experienced offensive line. And here are the numbers on third down for Florida State. 66 times they converted, but out of 182 attempts, that's 36.2%. Quite honestly, that's awful. And it was 94th out of 133 teams. Again, that's abysmal. So why would they be better this year? I'm going to tell you why. Two prime reasons. Number one, the offensive line last year, as I've said many times on this show, and most of you know, just couldn't stay healthy. The run game in the short yardage situation was a bit iffy. Sometimes you had a guy in the lineup that was playing, but maybe shouldn't have been, or perhaps should have been out the week before even. Who knows? But that's in the past. All I know is too many times Florida State got stuffed or lost yardage when everybody in the entire stadium knew 3rd and 1, you'd prefer to run the ball. 3rd and 2, you'd prefer to run it. 4th down, stuff like that. Those are drive killers. Those are momentum swings. Those are reasons that Florida State's offense wasn't quite as good as it should have been last year. And they still led the ACC in scoring. Why? Big plays. Florida State was insane with how good they were with big plays, whether running or passing. That's a very unique way to do it. I don't recommend you try that no matter what level it is. It generally doesn't work. But Florida State absolutely made it happen last year. Very big play offense. It's going to be different this year. Offensive line's just as experienced, if not more so. They've got a bevy of running backs. Talk a little bit about that in a moment. DJ's a fifth-year senior, so you got another graduate student in your program at quarterback. Yes, he's not going to be Jordan Travis. I grasp that. But DJ will be a player that's not going to just give the ball away. He only had 7 picks last year. He's not a dominant player. He's not a game manager. He's somewhere in between, and he's got a bevy of speed. I mean, Douglas in the slot. Got guys like Deuce Spann aren't even starting, but he's a tall, rangy kid coming off the bench that can fly. You got Jaylen Brown, who's made a breakthrough. He's your starter at one spot. He's one of the fastest guys in college football. The other spot, Malik Benson, maybe just as fast. That's as good a speed combo in college football as you're going to see starting for the Noles. Tight ends a little bit underrated. Guys like West, not many people know about them. They've gotten some pretty good reviews. Third down, Florida State has plenty of options. It will be hard to stop them. First question people are going to ask beyond the offensive line, okay, well, who's your running back going to be? Tofili is good. I've said this before as well. He is going to get you third downs. The only reason he hasn't been the guy is they've had so many good running backs on the roster. He's had to wait his turn. Good for him. He's going to get his shot this year to do it. Rodell, that transferred in from Alabama, he was a guy that was really good, not just sort of good, really good against clutch competition like Georgia. He was the main running back for the University of Alabama last year when they played the Bulldogs. Nick Saban's not mincing any words with fools. He's going to put in the guy that's going to help it. End of story. Rodell helped them beat Georgia. He's a clutch guy, and he's a powerful runner. That's a great 1-2 combination. You also got Keziah, you got Cam, you got Mackay, you've got Jalen Lucas, and you've got Singleton. Loaded backfield. I'm telling you, a lot of people, if there's only one position you want to pick, Florida State's running back room in particular is the reason they are a little bit underrated. They're going to have banged up guys like everybody running back. Guarantee you Florida State's run game will be better this year than they were last year. Here's an example. In 22, they averaged almost 5 yards a carry. In 23, it was only 4.5. That's not going to happen again. It will be north of 4.5, I guarantee you. Probably over 5 yards per carry. We'll see what Georgia Tech can do. We'll talk about their depth chart here in a few minutes and some of the matchups with that. And it is the key matchup of the whole game. Florida State's run game against Georgia Tech's run defense. We'll talk about that and their big-time player at middle linebacker. But no, Florida State's run game will be better in third downs. Secondly, if you look at the red zones situation last year, I was also surprised. Jordan Travis is the perfect guy to have in the red zone. Graduate student, elite athlete, been through a gazillion snaps. He's seen it all. You know what Florida State ranked in red zone touchdown percentage last year? Not scoring, touchdown percentage. Take a wild guess. I was shocked it was this low. This should be a team in the top 10. Instead, it ended up at 73rd. 60%. Again, it goes back to the O-line. Shrink the space. Safeties can play up a little more. They're not going backwards unless they want to go out of the end zone. You have to be able to run the ball better. Florida State will benefit there. Also, in those situations, I understand Johnny and Keon were key, not taken away from that. But with a little bit more balance, teams not knowing, I would not be surprised if Florida State's a little bit easier on themselves by just running their offense, not forcing the ball. And Johnny and Keon were also banged up for much of the second half of the season. I think you're going to see a more efficient passing game in the red zone too. Just my opinion. Don't be surprised if Jalen Lucas is a part of that. The only thing that is a deficient from last year, there were a few dynamic plays, and blessing for it, that Jordan Travis just made the other team look bad with his feet. Just God-given ability. I'm not taking away from Jordan Travis doing that. I just think that the sum of the parts for Florida State's offense this year, O-line, running back, tight end, receiver, and yes, quarterback DJ Uiagalelei will make it a little bit better for Florida State this year. And those are some of the main reasons that I think Florida State's offense is underrated. I've had a few private conversations with people, and I've seen a few things on the message boards. That's what spurred me to bring this topic up. Please comment on it. I'm curious what you think. Post something on YouTube. Give any kind of comment you want about yes, no. Here's something I'd like to see Florida State do in the red zone. Players that you think will step up, whatever it might be. Totally your own opinion. I just think that Florida State's offense will be more balanced, run the ball better in short yardage, and they'll be more efficient. That's my take on it. Coming up next, we're going to talk about Georgia Tech's depth chart, as well as how Florida State is going to attack the Georgia Tech defense in the run game in particular. We're going to talk some matchups here at Locked On Seminoles. That's next. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries, beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you are purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 back per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or any fancy dinner that you've been craving. You can save over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, a Lowe's, a Macy's, a Best Buy, and many other opportunities. It's time you joined over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 off just for trying it by using code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Also, make sure you check out college football here on the Locked On Network. College football is back, and the Locked On College Football Podcast kicks off the action with a live season preview at 7 p.m. this Tuesday, August 20th, and you can download it and watch it anytime you want on Locked On College 24/7 streaming YouTube channel. This 4-part series covers each of the 4 major conferences: ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and Southeastern Conference, and you will get a shot to learn more about the expanded college football playoffs, myself included. I talked about Florida State for this and all the things going on with the Noles. Be sure to check out this special streaming on Locked On College's 24/7 YouTube channel or Amazon Fire TV, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now let's talk a little depth chart with what's going on with Georgia Tech. There's a couple of surprises, and I'm not an expert on Georgia Tech, but the first one I'm going to talk about is the biggest shock. And good for them if this is what I'm about to say is 100% true, because that means Georgia Tech is on the rise. And again, good for the Yellow Jackets. But I was looking at their depth chart, and I talked about this on yesterday's show. Their left tackle was a freshman All-American last year. Now, he played because somebody else was injured or something, I'm sure, because true freshmen don't just walk into the lineup at left tackle. I get it. But on the depth chart, the first thing they got is left tackle for offense. And the guy I'm talking about, Ethan McEnany, is third team. After being a freshman All-American, that's wild. Good for him. Good for Georgia Tech that they got that much depth, but they got Corey Robinson the second and Jordan Brown as co-starters at left tackle. I don't know. That's wild that your starter from last year's third team. Maybe he's banged up. I don't know, but that was wild. The center and the left guard are good. They're guys that are back. I think they're going to have a pretty good offensive line. Right tackle, the guy at right guard, etc. They should be in pretty good shape up front. And for those of you who don't know, they have a legit running back. Good story. He's a guy that was a former pass catcher. Now, he's not the biggest fellow in the world, but if you can get over 1,000 yards at the FBS level, you're a ball player. So Jamal Haynes is somebody that Florida State's defense and everyone that Georgia Tech takes on this year should absolutely respect. He can play. I think he will also be involved in the pass game a little bit more than he was last year. Had 20 catches and 1 touchdown. Look out for Jamal Haynes. That's a guy, he's 5'9", 180, as far as what the depth chart says. I hope he's gained a little weight for his sake, but he's a durable guy. Ran for over 1,000 yards last year. They have Trey Cooley, Anthony Carey. They got a couple of different guys that can be key players in big situations, meaning we need that 1 yard. Anthony Carey, ironically, is from Carrollwood Day School in Tampa. It's a kid I know, heavily recruited, ends up at Tech. Very, very talented player. I think he will play a role in this game in some capacity. Receiving corps is talented. The most important thing that I noticed, and again, these are depth charts. I don't know how accurate that is with height and weights, but Eric Singleton is listed, the sophomore, who was really good as a true freshman. He was $170, $175 last year. He's listed at 190. He's going to be bigger and stronger, probably going to be a little more effective at the catch point if it's tight coverage. Florida State's obviously got a very good secondary, but I'm curious to see how those battles work, because he could be a Sunday player one day. He's trending in that direction. He's got a lot of talent. Watch out for him. Chase Lane, it's a redshirt senior. He's one of their other starters. And then the other guy is Malik Rutherford, very fast kid from the Miami area. He can fly. I think he's going to be your slot. You'll see him on some gadgets, jet sweeps. You might see a reverse throwback pass. It's first game of the year. Don't be surprised at anything that Georgia Tech runs. On defense, this is interesting because I didn't know how they were going to line it up for this game. They can't do it all in one depth chart, but they have it set up as a 3-down lineman based on their depth chart with what you call a rush end, which kind of like think of the old New York Giants defense, current Alabama, Georgia from the modern era, a stand-up guy on most of the plays. It's pretty much a pass rusher, but occasionally drops. That's how they got it listed. Two things of note. Zeke Biggers, and the name fits, he's down weight at 6'6", 320 pounds. Had 40 tackles last year, according to CFB stats. He's a good player. He's their nose guard. He's 6'6". He's a very unique player. I'm curious to see how the Noles either double him, run away from him. They're going to wham block him, combination. How are they going to attack the middle? He's a good ball player. If Georgia Tech has effectiveness with him, taking on double teams, and the guy I mentioned a little bit ago, that is their dude, and I hope I pronounced this right, Kyle Eford, the linebacker, had 81 tackles last year. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore. He's got a chance to get paid one day. 230-pound guy in the middle. Him and Biggers. The goal for a 3-4 is to let the inside linebackers flow to the football without getting gobbled up all the time, at least, with the guards. Now, they are head up on them sometimes, and they got to use some of their own ability, but they're going to try to get Eford opportunity. He's a good tackler. So how it goes with Biggers is important. They also get a guy back from last year who was out. He's their team captain, Sylvian Hundigen. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, but he's going to be a strong side end. I think he's a pretty good athlete from all the things I've read. But again, he was out last year. First game back. How does he react? I really don't know. The secondary to me is a little bit of an unknown, even if they've got a lot of experienced guys, and here's why. The run defense just wasn't good last season. Teams didn't have to throw it against them as much. So while we have some evidence of what they can do, A, it's a new year, but B, don't be surprised if Florida State surprises everybody, kind of like they did against Pittsburgh last year, and attacks it. Here's the size for some of their guys on their secondary level, and it's not anything unusual. It's pretty standard, but across the board, the nickel, 6 foot, 175 pounds, that's going to be a smaller guy. I'm curious if Florida State will attack that with the bigger guy, like a tight end, like West or somebody in the slot. It could be anybody, really. Any tight end against a 175-pound guy. You can run screens, outside zone, or anything. Gain an advantage. Strong safety, 6'2", 195. Free safety, 6'2", 200. Corner, 6 foot, 190, and 6 foot, 195. Let's see how Florida State attacks that. Because if you look at the group overall, Georgia Tech has some size up front. They've got experience at linebacker. If the back end holds up, and again, we just don't really know against an elite team, if they do stop Florida State's run game a lot more than I think they will, hold them to, like, let's say 3.5 yards a carry, that secondary is the difference between winning and losing there. We'd be in a close game. I think Florida State's going to win because they're going to be able to run the ball. Prove me wrong. I don't think it's going to be as nearly as bad for Georgia Tech as they were last year, but still, I still think the Noles will run the ball. But if that secondary steps up, it changes the game. Even one pick, even one pass deflection where it was a close play, it could still be the difference. With Biggers and Eford in the middle and some guys back, some speed on the edge, they have a good stand-up outside linebacker. Georgia Tech's defense is going to be much improved. That much I'm convinced of from doing research and talking to a few people. Now we just got to see how they're attacked. And that's what the matchup's about. Last point here on the Georgia Tech depth chart. I still think Florida State is going to scheme them to death, partially due to the nickel not being the biggest guy in the world. Backup's not either, by the way. And Florida State has a plethora of different kinds of receivers. Ja'Kai in the slot. You can put Jalen in the slot. The running backs can move around. Screens in a traditional manner. And then they got big receivers. I don't know how much Hakeem will play, but keep in mind, he's 6'2", 6'3", 215 pounds. That's not good for any cornerback to go up with. Red zone, we talked about that a little bit ago. He might be a guy they look at. guy like Jack West, somebody coming out of the backfield. They might throw it to Cam Davis, the freshman. They're going to put their secondary linebackers and nickel players all in spots to make them find out just how good they are. Florida State has a plethora of skill players, so we're going to see about that. Next up, speaking of how much Georgia Tech can compete with Florida State, I'm going to talk about the ways they could actually win. Could Florida State lose this game? It is possible. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. You've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September the 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time you wish. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com to look at odds all over college football, MLB, and everything else. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Also, thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Now go check out Locked On College Football's podcast, from NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment stuff with Florida State. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link in the Locked On College Football in the description, so don't need to search it all over the place. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. Now, let's talk about how Georgia Tech could actually win this game. Is it possible? The answer is yes. Florida State is in its first game. There's going to be plays where you just kind of goof up. There's going to be a clock error. There's going to be a mishandling of a snap. There's going to be a missed field goal, something of that nature. The question is, first and foremost, there's going to be 3 things here. Do you compound it? Good teams make a mistake and then immediately rebound. Bad teams, or even mediocre ones, will make a mistake and then they just hand it over to their opposition. When Florida State has a fumble on a punt and loses it, when Florida State has a pass that's dropped, it's an easy 3rd down. What do you see next? That's probably the #1 thing I'm looking at from a big picture. How does Florida State rally? What is their character? What is their charisma? Is it championship level, or is it just, okay, this is going to be a good team this year, 8-4, 9-3. We're going to skate by some teams that we're better than, but we're not going to dominate. You'll know pretty quick. This is definitely the kind of game, if you give the other team an opportunity, Haynes King's a really good quarterback. You give him more than one of those, by the way, like you get one freebie, like if you get 1 turnover a game, that's common. But if you give him 2 or more, like they're +2, that's danger zone. So again, do you compound the problem? That's a yes or no. We're going to find out real quick. First games are notorious, especially with special teams blunders. Let's see how the Noles do. #2 way they can lose. I highly doubt this is going to happen, but I could see it possibly if they have a bust. At some point, Georgia Tech is definitely going to challenge Florida State deep. They throw the ball down the field. They got one of the best passing offenses in college football. Does Florida State just make plays? This is just another simple checkbox. I don't like the matchup for Georgia Tech there because Florida State is pretty sound, but they did give up some chunk yardage plays last year too. Edge FSU, but if you're going to lose something that you think you're the better team at, probably falters. I mean, they're favored, depending on the sports book, by 13 or more points. That's a pretty big spread. If you're going to lose, you got to give up a freebie somewhere. That's the other way besides turnovers that you can do it. #3, just overall in general, something goes wrong with Florida State's offense that we just didn't see. The stuff I talked about earlier with 3rd downs and red zones, just missed opportunities. Yeah, you get a field goal. Yeah, you move the ball, but did you capitalize? Kind of that in between, and maybe Georgia Tech has a late rally. That's maybe the most unlikely of them, because you're talking about the whole game where you're sputtering on offense and kind of giving it back to Georgia Tech, and they still have to drive. Like, you get a couple of first downs, and then you punt it midfield. They got to drive 75 to 85 yards. It can happen. And if you miss a field goal or two and you like shank a punt or something in there to add to it, it's possible. But again, the key on this third point, Florida State's offense just not being in sync yet. It happens in first games. It does. We'll see. I'm not convinced that it's going to, and I'm leaning, like I started in the show, to say that Florida State's offense is a little bit underrated. So I don't think that third point is going to take place. And you never know about the turnovers and the blunders. What's the chemistry like, etc. We'll see. But Florida State should be the better football team. Now they just got to go out and prove it. With that being said, once again, thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you all stopping in. It's been a lot of fun to come in and do this show every day, and it's part of what I like doing and studying and researching this stuff. We are to the college football season. Talk Noles in depth every day, so come back and check us out. And again, check out my guy Spencer McLaughlin over at the Locked On College Football Network. It is a really good show and a lot of different stuff going on. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and I will see you again on Wednesday. Everybody be good.